The goal of many aspiring racing drivers is to reach Formula 1. It's an extremely exclusive club that not many people get into. However, most drivers who get to that point then get an adrenaline kick that then constantly surges around their system, which feeds a message to their brain telling them, I want to be here as long as possible. Some go on to have glittering careers that last well over a decade, whilst others have the pleasure of a single season. However, there is a club of drivers whose F1 ambitions lasted even less time, which is where the subject of this video comes in. That club is of drivers who have competed in one solitary race. And today I'm going to rank all the drivers who have done just that, from the year 1980 to the modern day. Just a few quick pieces about this list you need to know. 1. Nick de Vries is not on this list, mainly because, all going well, he should be competing for the whole season this year for AlphaTauri. Number 2, Roland Ratzenberger will also not be on this list, as there was every chance he could have gone on to make more starts until his fatal accident. Number 3, the reason why it's not any time before 1980 is that back in the 50s and 60s, several drivers competed in just one race, back when the sport had one-off independent entries, and I just thought it best not to include them. And 4, I'm basing this ranking on the driver's performance in that race weekend, rather than the driver's entire racing career. Anyway, it's about time I give my opinion on a question that nobody has been asking about in Formula 1. Number 9, yes, there aren't that many, Jean-Louis Schlesser. Schlesser's career in single-seaters never set the world alight. He tried to qualify for the 1983 French Grand Prix, driving for the Ram March team. However, he ended up not qualifying. But he would get another attempt at a Grand Prix 5 years later. Schlesser was working as a test driver for Williams. An unwell Nigel Mansell meant that Schlesser was called upon for the 1988 Italian Grand Prix. After qualifying 22nd, Schlesser never showed huge pace throughout the race, but he's most remembered for getting involved in a collision with the then race leader Ayrton Senna. Schlesser ran wide and despite his best efforts couldn't avoid wheel-to-wheel contact with Senna, who was subsequently out of the race and also ruined the chance of the all-conquering McLaren team winning every race of that year. Schlesser would finish 2 laps down in 11th place. Mansell was fit enough to return to the Williams seat, while Schlesser went back to sports car racing. Number 8. Miguel-Ángel Guerrero. Competing in European Formula 2 for a couple of years, Miguel would make the jump to F1 in 1981 with backmarker's Osella. He failed to qualify for the first 3 races, but would start in San Marino. Unfortunately, he would get into a collision on the first lap with Eliseo Salazar, where he would suffer a broken ankle and wrist. Miguel wouldn't compete in F1 again, but would go on to make an impression in the South American motorsport scene. Number 7. Marco Pachala. A driver who developed a decent career in F3000 and Japanese F3000, Marco was given a ride by Jordan at the 1993 Italian Grand Prix after he impressed Eddie Jordan with his performances. In qualifying, he did a decent job, just half a second behind his teammate Rubens Barrichello. But his Grand Prix journey lasted around 800 metres after he was involved in a collision that eliminated a number of cars. The poor guy didn't even make the first corner. He was then replaced by Emanuele Naspetti at the next race, and Marco returned to racing in Japan. Number 6. Pierre-Henri Rapponel. Another driver who went on to have great success in sports car racing, Rapponel is the person who has featured the most in F1 weekends than any other driver in this list. Unfortunately, that's because Rapponel's F1 resume consists of 17 attempted starts, with him being able to qualify for one of them. That Grand Prix would be in 1989 at Monaco. He was driving for one of the backmarker teams in Cologne, and did a pretty good job in qualifying, managing to grab 18th spot on the grid, 1 place ahead of the Lotus of Nelson Piquet. A great performance it may have been, however his F1 race outing ended after just 19 laps with a gearbox problem. He spent the rest of 1989 failing to qualify. Rapponel is now a test driver for Bugatti. Number 5. Tiff Nadell. Tiff Nadell. Perhaps known best for his antics on 5th gear and old Top Gear, Tiff was a great driver in the early days of Formula Ford. After competing in the British Formula 1 Championship, Tiff would then compete in F1, the Global Edition, driving for backmarkers Ensign, who were only entering 1 car for the majority of rounds in 1980. Tiff would qualify for the Belgian Grand Prix being held at Zolder. a superb lap, just under 4.5 seconds off the pole time. I know it doesn't sound that impressive nowadays, but back then that was a great achievement. His race though would last just 12 laps before the Ford engine in his ensign had had enough. Tiff would fail to qualify for the Monaco Grand Prix, where after that Jan Lammers would get the seat. Tiff spent the rest of his career outside of telly doing, well, any form of racing, even European NASCAR. Number 4. Jack Aitken. A driver who showed lots of promise in his early career in the Formula Renault ranks, Aitken has spent a lot of his career as a test or reserve driver for either Renault or Williams, the latter of which he would race for at the 2020 Sakir Grand Prix, covering for George Russell, who in turn was covering for Lewis Hamilton. Aitken would qualify on the shortened layout of the Bahrain track, just a tenth behind his teammate Nicholas Latifi. However, whilst he showed pretty good pace in the race, it was blighted somewhat by an error at the last corner, where he hit the wall and lost his front wing. Aitken would finish the race in 16th place. When Hamilton came back to Mercedes at the next round, Jack was back in a reserve driver role at Williams and took part in just one further practice session with the team. A couple of weeks ago, Jack said he left Williams so he could focus his career in sports car racing. Number 3. Andre Lotterer. This guy's talent behind the wheel is undisputed, and arguably out of all the drivers on this list, is the one who deserved a career far greater than the one race he participated in. After collecting overall Le Mans victories with Audi and doing wonders in the Japanese racing scene, Andre did have F1 knowledge prior to 2014, where he was a test driver for Jaguar from 2000 to 2003. However, when Caterham was bought by a consortium, its regular driver, Kamui Kobayashi, was removed from the seat in the place of Andre, who came in with sponsorship. Yes, this was technically a pay drive, but what a driver Caterham had got for the 2014 Belgian Grand Prix. Despite Andre not having driven the car until first practice, he qualified in the wet conditions nearly a second faster than future Indy 500 winner Marcus Ericsson. Lotterer's race would last one lap after an electrical issue, after which he would not race again in F1. Number 2. Stefan Sarazan. A driver who's also established a fantastic career in sports car racing. It seems to be the pattern with these drivers. Sarazan was an up-and-coming driver in the mid-90s, competing in F3000. In 1999, he was a test driver for the Prost F1 team. However, that's not who he'd race for in F1. That would be a Minardi who needed a replacement driver after Luca Badoer injured his wrist. Sarazan was the person tasked with driving the Omo1 chassis. He qualified nearly 7 tenths faster than his teammate Marc Genet and ahead of both of the Arrows. He had a good race as well. However, it would end after 31 laps with a wing failure causing him to hit the wall at turn 14, and then having a series of sick-inducing pirouettes. He was okay, but that would be his last time as an F1 driver, as he spent the next few seasons as a Prost test driver before concentrating on sports car racing. At number 1, well, it had to be this guy, and I have a feeling you probably know who's going to come next. It's Markus Winkelhock. Markus never had a glittering career in the junior single-seater ranks, but he did become a test and reserve driver for Midland in 2006 and then Spiker in 2007. After Christian Albers lost his drive due to sponsorship reasons, Markus would make his F1 start at the Nürburgring for the European Grand Prix. The Spikers were one of the backmarker teams for 2007, but Markus still didn't qualify brilliantly. He was just under 1.5 seconds off his teammate Adrian Sutil. However, Winkelhock pitted before the race began to fit wet rubber on the Spiker, with heavy rain being predicted. Markus and his team came out with what looked like a 2 billion IQ move as the rain fell down, with bedlam, chaos, carnage, delirium, any word with a suitable connotation to several drivers going off and sliding around all over the place, whilst Markus was driving impeccably in the awful conditions, which was impressive considering he'd never driven an F1 car in the wet before. The weather was deemed too wet to continue, so the near 35-second Winkelhock lead was wiped out. Another gamble of keeping wet tyres on didn't work when the race restarted in damp conditions. Marcus's race would end on lap 13 with a hydraulic problem. Markus then went off to race in DTM and sports cars. I mean, really, it had to be him at number 1. Sure, one lap pace didn't seem to be Marcus's strong point, however he seemed a really adaptable driver to the conditions, which, considering he was going in at the deep end, was really impressive. To be honest, the top 3 was a really close call, yet all that being said, The answer to the question nobody had asked about is, in my opinion, Marcus Winkelhock was the best driver to have driven in just one F1 race in their career after 1980. Either way, that's going to be it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. Do you agree with my choice, or would you have put someone different at top spot? Say your thoughts in the comment section. However, until the next video, enjoy the rest of your day.